The sun was setting behind the dry mountains of the border district. The wind carried dust through the narrow roads, past empty houses and tired fences. It was the kind of place where nothing new ever happened, until that evening. A deep sound rolled across the sky, like thunder but sharper. People looked up, confused. A streak of silver light cut through the clouds, moving too fast, too low, then silence. A flash appeared beyond the hills, followed by a dull boom. No one saw what really crashed. No one except an old shepherd, who said later that something shaped like a bird but made of metal fell from the sky. From the smoke he saw a tall figure step out, a woman glowing faintly in the dark. By the time morning came, a stranger walked into town. She was slim, dressed in simple clothes covered with dust, her eyes hidden behind dark glasses. Her name, she said, was Alia. She spoke in slow, careful English, her voice soft but distant, as if learning each word. She stopped in front of a small restaurant called Maria's Kitchen. The place was old, the sign cracked, but the smell of food drifted out warmly. Alia stepped inside. Maria, the owner, looked up from cleaning a table. "You look tired, miss. Can I help you? I'm looking for a job," Alia said. "I can cook." "I need a place to stay," Maria smiled kindly. "You came far, yes? We don't have much here, but maybe I can use another pair of hands. You can start tomorrow." From the corner table, a man looked up from his coffee. He wore a dark uniform, clean but faded, with the small emblem of the Border Patrol. His name was Ethan Cross, known around town as a quiet, serious man who followed every rule. He watched the stranger carefully. Something about her didn't fit. Her walk was too balanced, her eyes too still. That night the wind blew cold. Ethan sat by his window writing reports when he saw a dim light in the distance, the direction where the crash had happened. The same direction the new woman had walked from. He frowned, set down his pen, and looked outside again. Through the thin curtains he could see into the small house next to his, the one Maria had given Alia to stay in. The light flickered strangely, not like a lamp, more like energy. Alia stood by the window holding a small metallic device in her hand. It glowed blue, then faded. She looked around, her expression tense, almost frightened. For a moment she lifted her glasses and her eyes flashed silver. Ethan stepped back quickly, heart pounding. What had he just seen? The next day Alia worked in the kitchen. She moved quietly, quickly, and every dish she made came out perfect. Too perfect. She cut vegetables with speed no one could match. When Maria asked how she learned to cook so well, Alia only smiled and said, "Observation." Ethan came in for lunch, his eyes never leaving her. "You new here," he said. "Where are you from?" Alia looked at him calmly. "Far away." "Which side of the border?" he asked. "Neither," she said softly, turning away. That night, as Ethan walked home, he noticed strange footprints in the dirt behind the restaurant. Not boots, not shoes, the shape was narrow with a faint metallic shimmer in the print. He crouched down, touching it. It was warm. He followed the trail to her door, then stopped. A soft hum came from inside, like the sound of a small machine. He wanted to knock, but something inside told him to wait. Later, in his own house, he couldn't sleep. He opened his drawer and pulled out an old file, unidentified aerial events. He compared the witness report from last night with what he saw today. Everything pointed to the same thing. The stranger appeared right after the crash. At midnight, the lights went out in the district. Ethan looked out again and saw her silhouette glowing faintly blue through the curtains. He whispered to himself, "Who are you, Alia?" The next morning, Maria found her fridge working again, though it had been broken for weeks. "It just started running," she said with surprise. Alia only smiled and kept cooking. Ethan passed by, pretending not to look, but his eyes caught something shiny on the ground near her back door. A small piece of metal, shaped like a chip. He picked it up quietly. On one side was an unknown symbol, circular, with lines that pulsed faintly like veins of light. He closed his hand over it, feeling a chill crawl up his arm. That evening, as the sun went down, the wind carried a low, distant hum again coming from the mountains. Ethan looked at the horizon, then at Alia's window. He saw her standing there, staring at the same glow in the sky. For a moment, their eyes met. Hers flashed silver again, just for an instant. Ethan whispered under his breath, "She's not from here." And as the night settled over the border district, the quiet town felt different, as if something beyond the stars had just arrived. The next morning, sunlight touched the quiet border town. Dust floated through the air like golden smoke. At Maria's kitchen, the smell of fresh bread filled the small room. Alia stood by the stove, moving her hands with calm focus, flipping, cutting, stirring, her motions fast and smooth like a machine trained for years. Customers came early, curious about the new cook. One man whispered, "She's strange, but her food tastes like heaven." Another said, "She moves too quick, don't you think?" Ethan sat at his usual table near the window, pretending to read the newspaper but secretly studying her every move. Alia didn't look nervous. She smiled softly as she served a plate of steaming soup to a child who giggled and said, "You cook like magic." She froze for a second at that word, magic. Then her smile returned. After lunch, when the place was quiet, Ethan walked to the counter. "You're not from around here," he said. "No," Alia answered, cleaning a cup. "I travel much." "From where?" She looked out the window before replying. "Far north." Ethan leaned closer. "You mean beyond the border?" She turned her head slowly. "Does it matter?" Her tone was soft but firm. Ethan felt an odd chill. Her eyes, hidden behind those glasses, seemed to see more than he wanted her to. That evening, Maria closed early. "Powerline weak," she said. "The lights keep flickering." Ethan walked home as the sun slipped behind the hills. The town seemed peaceful, but his thoughts were heavy. He couldn't forget that strange chip he found near Alia's door. It wasn't like any metal he'd seen. Smooth, cold, and glowing faintly even in the dark. He decided to check again. As night fell, he stepped quietly into the alley behind Maria's kitchen. The air smelled of oil and spices. The restaurant was dark except for a thin blue light shining through the back window. He peeked inside. Alia stood near the sink, holding a round silver object in her hands. Not from this world. It floated above her palms, spinning slowly, glowing brighter with each rotation. Her face looked calm but sad, as if she were remembering something far away. Ethan's heart pounded. He wanted to shout, but his voice froze. The glow grew stronger until the whole kitchen shimmered. Then suddenly she clenched her hand, and the object vanished into thin air. The room fell dark again. Alia turned toward the window. Ethan stepped back quickly, hiding in the shadows. She opened the door and looked outside. The night air stirred her hair as she whispered something in a language Ethan couldn't understand. Soft, musical, not human. The words floated like wind over the sand. Then she closed the door and disappeared inside. Ethan stared at the ground, shaking his head. "Not possible," he murmured. But the truth was already clear. She wasn't from Earth. The next day, the town buzzed with rumors. Someone had seen lights in the mountains again. A farmer swore he heard voices coming from the sky. The military base 20 miles north sent patrol drones to scan the area. Ethan felt torn. His duty said he should report the stranger, but his heart whispered otherwise. Alia had hurt no one. She worked hard, smiled kindly, and fed the poor without asking for money. That evening he went to see her. She was washing dishes, humming softly. "I saw something," he said quietly. She didn't look up. "Yes," she said. "You saw too much." Her calm voice made his skin prickle. "What are you?" he asked. Finally, she turned to him. "Not your enemy," she said. "That's all you need to know." He took a step closer. "You crashed near the hills, didn't you?" Her silence was answer enough. "I should report you," he said, though his voice wavered. "You won't," she replied, looking straight into his eyes, "because you've already seen my fear." For a moment they stood there, two strangers from different worlds. The tension between them was heavy yet fragile, like glass ready to break. Outside, thunder rolled, though no clouds filled the sky. Ethan walked away, confused and restless. In his pocket, the strange metal chip pulsed again like a tiny heartbeat. That night, the restaurant's power suddenly went out. Maria called out for help. Alia stepped into the darkness, her eyes glowing faint silver. She raised her hand, and every bulb flickered back to life one by one without a sound. Everyone gasped. Maria clapped her hands together. "You fixed it." How Alia only smiled faintly. "Old skill," she said. Ethan, watching from the doorway, didn't smile. He had seen it. The glow, the same light from the crash. Later, when the place was empty, he looked down at the chip again. It now showed a faint symbol, a circle with 3 lines through it like a warning mark. He muttered, "What are you hiding, Alia?" Far above the sky, beyond human sight, a silent object drifted in orbit. Its red sensor lights blinked twice, gone as if it had just received her signal. And deep in the dark, Alia sat alone in her small room, staring at her hands. "They found me," she whispered. "Already?" The wind was heavy the next morning. It carried the smell of rain, strange for a place that rarely saw any. The clouds above the border district gathered thick and gray, hanging low over the small houses. Ethan didn't sleep all night. The glowing chip on his table pulsed faintly like it was alive. Every time he tried to close his eyes, he saw Alia's silver gaze, calm, sad, and full of something he didn't understand. By sunrise, he made his decision. He walked to Maria's kitchen. Inside, the place was quiet. The morning customers hadn't arrived yet. Alia stood by the window, watching the dark sky. She didn't turn when he entered, but she said softly, "You came early." Ethan stopped a few steps behind her. "We need to talk," he said. She didn't move. "You've already made your guess," she replied. "So ask." He took out the glowing chip and placed it on the counter. "I found this outside your house." Alia turned slowly, her eyes meeting his. "You shouldn't have touched that," she said, her voice low but not angry. "What is it?" Ethan demanded. "You can't pretend anymore. I saw the light in your hands. I saw that thing floating." Alia stared at the chip for a long moment. Then she sighed. "It's a tracker. A piece of my ship. When it broke, I thought it was destroyed. But it's still sending signals. Signals to who?" Ethan asked. Her silence was answer enough. Ethan's voice hardened. "You're being hunted, aren't you?" She nodded once. "Yes, and now they'll come here." Ethan felt the weight of her words. "Who are they?" "My people," she said quietly. "I ran from them," he frowned. "Why?" "Because I refused to fight in their war," she whispered. "On my world, they called it honor. But it was murder. I escaped in a stolen ship and followed a signal, one that spoke of peace. It led me here to Earth." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "You're saying there's going to be a war here?" "No," she said quickly. "I won't let that happen." Her voice trembled for the first time. "If they find me, they'll erase everything near me. They don't leave witnesses." For a moment, the room was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Ethan looked at her, really looked. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't dangerous. She was scared. Then a sharp buzzing sound cut through the air. Both turned toward the window. In the distance, a drone flew low over the rooftop, scanning the ground with red light. Ethan's instincts kicked in. "That's military," he said. "But not ours." Alia stepped back, panic in her eyes. "It's them." He grabbed her hand. It felt strangely warm, almost electric. "Come on. We can hide at my house." They rushed out the back door as the drone passed overhead. A faint beam scanned the area, stopping for a second on Maria's kitchen, then moved away. Inside Ethan's small house, Alia stood by the window, breathing fast. "I can mask my signal for a while," she said. "But not forever." Ethan closed the blinds. "Why did you come to this town? You could have hidden anywhere." Alia looked at him with tired eyes. "Because it's quiet. People here still smile at strangers. I thought I could start again. Be useful, be human." Her voice broke on the last word. Before Ethan could reply, a loud knock echoed through the door. He froze. Alia's hand began to glow faintly, ready to defend. He motioned for silence, then opened the door slightly. A man in uniform stood outside, tall, clean-shaven, wearing the same insignia as Ethan's patrol division. "Officer Cross," the man said. "We're investigating a report of a possible crash site nearby. You seen anything unusual?" Ethan kept his face steady. "Nothing out of the ordinary." The officer's eyes narrowed. "You sure? We got readings of unusual energy near this block. Probably bad wiring," Ethan said flatly. After a tense pause, the man nodded. "If you notice anything." Strange reported immediately. "We're under federal order." When the door shut, Ethan turned to Alia. She was trembling slightly. "You lied for me," she said. "I don't know why," Ethan replied. "Maybe I just don't trust them more than I trust you." Alia smiled weakly. "That's a dangerous choice." Outside, the drone's red light passed by the window again. Inside, Ethan whispered, "They'll come back." Alia looked out at the sky. "Then we don't have much time." She reached out and touched the chip still lying on the table. It stopped glowing. Ethan blinked. "What did you do?" "I disconnected it," she said. "But they already know I'm here." He nodded slowly. "Then we prepare." The storm outside finally broke and rain began to fall for the first time in months. Heavy, cold, and endless. The small border town slept, unaware that something far greater than any human storm was already on its way. And inside the little house by the restaurant, a human man and an alien woman stood together, knowing the silence would not last long. The storm didn't stop that night. It howled across the border town like an angry spirit. Lightning flashed over the mountains and thunder rolled so deep it shook the windows. People stayed inside, afraid to even peek out, but Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat near the window, his old rifle across his lap, watching the dark sky. Alia sat across from him, silent. The small lamp between them flickered. "They're close," she said quietly. Ethan nodded. "How do you know?" She looked up. "Because I can hear their signal. It's like a heartbeat, calling for me." Outside, the wind grew stronger. The rain hit the glass like stones. Then a sudden flash cut through the sky, not lightning this time. It was blue, artificial. Ethan stood up fast. "That's not weather," he said. Alia walked to the door, her expression sharp. "No, that's a locator beam." The sound came next, a low, humming vibration that shook the ground. The restaurant lights across the street blinked twice and died. The whole district went dark. Ethan grabbed his flashlight, but Alia stopped him. "No light," she whispered. "They can trace energy sources." A second later, a beam of red light swept across the rooftops, scanning everything in its path. The hum grew louder. Ethan peered through the curtain and saw it. A drone, larger than any he had seen before, floated above the street. Its metal shell was shaped like an insect, its wings glowing red. It fired a bolt into the ground, and a shockwave tore through the road, shattering windows. Alia raised her hands. A shimmering blue barrier appeared in front of the house just in time. The energy hit it and scattered like fireworks. Ethan stared in disbelief. You can do that?" Alia didn't answer. Her eyes glowed silver as she focused. "Run to Maria's, there are people inside." "I'll hold it off." Ethan shook his head. "I'm not leaving you." She looked at him, voice calm but firm. "Then move fast." They dashed out into the storm. The air burned with the smell of ozone. The drone turned toward them, firing again. Alia threw her hand out. The blast curved around them and hit an empty truck, sending it spinning. They reached Maria's kitchen. Inside, Maria and her son huddled under a table. "What's happening?" she cried. "No time," Ethan said. "Stay low." Another explosion rocked the street. Alia stepped outside, her hands glowing brighter. Blue energy spun around her, forming a shield dome over the restaurant. The drone fired again, but its beam bounced off the shield and shot back into the sky. Ethan peeked out and saw more lights moving in from the hills. "There's more coming!" he shouted. Alia's expression darkened. "They found me, and now they'll burn everything to erase me." Ethan clenched his fists. "Not while I'm breathing." He ran to his truck, grabbed a small launcher from the back, and fired at the nearest drone. The rocket exploded mid-air, hitting one wing. The machine spun and crashed into a water tank. Steam hissed out as it melted. Alia smiled faintly. "You humans still fight with fire and iron." Ethan grinned. "It works." But before they could breathe, a new sound filled the air, deeper, louder. A ship descended through the storm clouds, black and massive, its red lights cutting through the rain. It landed just outside the town, shaking the ground. From the ship's side, figures stepped out. Tall, armored, their eyes glowing red like burning coals. Alia's voice trembled. "My people," Ethan stared. "They look like soldiers." "They are," she said. "And they never miss their target." One of the armored figures pointed at her. A voice echoed from a helmet speaker. "Alia Terran Defect Unit. You are ordered to surrender. Violation of exile protocol. Return immediately or be neutralized." Alia took a slow breath. "Tell them." No, the soldiers raised their weapons. Beams of red light shot forward, but Alia lifted both hands. Her shield flared brighter than ever before, a wave of blue light exploding outward. The shockwave sent the soldiers flying. Ethan ran to her side, shielding his eyes from the light. "You're going to burn yourself out." "I have to protect them," she said through clenched teeth. The main ship's cannon began to glow, charging for a massive blast. Ethan looked around desperately. There's fuel tanks behind the restaurant, he said. If that cannon fires, the whole town's gone. Alia turned to him, her face glowing with tears and light. Then I'll stop it. Before he could stop her, she raised her hand toward the ship. The ground cracked beneath her feet as the air filled with thunder. A beam of blue energy shot upward, meeting the cannon's red blast halfway. The two forces collided in midair, twisting like fire and lightning. The explosion that followed could be seen for miles. The ship trembled, engines failing, and began to pull back into the clouds. The remaining soldiers vanished in flashes of red light, teleporting away. The drone wrecks fell silent. The rain continued to fall. Alia dropped to her knees, weak and pale. Ethan rushed to her side. You saved them, he said, his voice shaking. She looked up at him with dimming eyes. No, she whispered. I only delayed them. Ethan helped her stand. Then we'll run. She nodded slowly, her voice fading. They'll send more. Lightning flashed again, and for the first time Ethan realized this was only the beginning. The town still smelled of smoke and rain the next morning. The attack had ended, but nothing felt safe anymore. Black marks covered the streets where drones had exploded. Windows were shattered, power lines burned, and frightened people whispered stories no one would believe. Ethan stood on the hill overlooking the border district. His clothes were wet, his face streaked with dust and ash. Below him, Maria's kitchen stood half broken, its sign hanging by a nail. Yet somehow it was still standing, protected by the strange energy Alia had created. Alia sat beside him, wrapped in a torn blanket. Her silver skin faintly shimmered under the pale sunrise hidden beneath the dirt. She looked tired, more human now, but her eyes still held that distant glow. They'll come again, she said quietly. My people never stop. They'll send another unit, stronger than the last. Ethan nodded, staring at the broken sky where her pursuers had vanished. Then we can't stay here. She turned to him. You'd run away with me? Even now, after what you've seen. He gave a small, tired smile. You saved this town. That's more than anyone else ever did. So yes, I'm going with you. For the first time she smiled too, faint and uncertain. Then we must go south. There's an old communication tower in the desert. If I can reach it, I might contact someone who can help. Ethan frowned. Someone from your world? No, she said softly. Someone who hates it. They packed what little they had. Water, old rations, a flashlight, and a small case of tools Alia built from scraps of her ship. By noon they were gone, driving Ethan's truck down the dirt road that led into the wasteland. The desert stretched endlessly, quiet and wide. The wind whispered through the sand like a voice too old to care. For hours they said nothing. The engine's hum and the crunch of gravel were the only sounds. Alia finally spoke. On my planet there was a word, Sarin. It means home that no longer exists. That's what Earth is becoming for me. Ethan glanced at her. What about your people? Aren't they looking for home too? She shook her head. No, they only look for control. They used to believe in peace and building worlds, but then they found war easier to win than kindness. Her voice trembled slightly. I was part of their science corps. I built weapons, the kind that could wipe out cities. When I saw what they did with my work, I ran. Ethan drove silently, his hands tight on the wheel. And they couldn't forgive you for that? No, she whispered. They called me a traitor. The truck rattled over the rocks. In the distance, the tall shape of the old communication tower appeared, thin and broken but still standing like a steel ghost. Ethan slowed the vehicle. That thing's been dead for years, he said. Alia smiled faintly. Not to me. They reached the base by sunset. The tower rose high above the dunes, its rusted metal glowing red in the fading light. Alia climbed the ladder with calm strength, carrying her small case of alien tools. Ethan followed, his boots clanging on the steel steps. The higher they climbed, the stronger the wind became. At the top, the world stretched endless. Desert, clouds, silence. Alia opened her case and took out a glowing crystal shard. It hummed softly, lighting her face with blue light. Ethan watched. That's part of your ship? Yes, she said. It can amplify signals across dimensions. Dimensions? He repeated. She smiled gently. It's a little more than distance, Ethan. She placed the shard into the tower's broken core. The rusted metal around it began to hum, like a heart starting to beat again. Blue sparks danced up the cables. The tower came alive. Now, Alia whispered. touching her hand to the controls. Let's hope he's listening, Ethan frowned. Who? But before she could answer, the ground shook. A faint red beam appeared on the horizon, cutting through the darkening sky. Alia's face went pale. No, she said. They traced the signal. A ship appeared far away, smaller than before but faster. Its engines screamed across the air. Ethan drew his rifle. How many? 3 drones. 1 main vessel, she said quickly. We can't fight here. If the tower is destroyed, Earth loses all high-range comms in this region. Then we run? She looked at him, the wind whipping her hair, her silver eyes fierce. No, she said. We finish. Alia's fingers flew across the console, and the blue light from the tower shot upward, brighter than lightning. The beam split the clouds, sending waves of energy across the sky. Ethan shielded his face from the glare. What did you do? I sent a message, she said. Not to my people, to someone else. The ship fired a blast toward the tower. Alia grabbed Ethan's arm and jumped from the platform. They landed hard in the sand as the explosion tore the top of the tower apart. When the dust cleared, the ship hovered above them, its red lights blinking. A mechanical voice echoed, Surrender, Alia Terran. She stood up slowly. No, she said. You will. A second later, the blue beam from the broken tower surged again, brighter, stronger, and hit the ship. It spun out of control, crashing into the dunes in a burst of flame. Ethan stared in awe. How did you... Alia looked at the fading light. Because I didn't call for help, she said quietly. I called for a warning, he frowned. A warning to who? To the humans, she whispered. Because now, they'll come for all of you. The night after the tower explosion, the desert was silent. Too silent. The wind had stopped, the air hung heavy, and the stars above seemed dimmer as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Ethan and Alia stood among the wreckage, the smell of smoke and metal thick around them. The ship that crashed lay half buried in the sand, burning in small blue flames that refused to die. Alia stared at it, her face pale under the moonlight. That was only a scout, she said softly. The real fleet will follow its signal. Ethan reloaded his weapon and looked at her. How long do we have? She closed her eyes, listening to something he couldn't hear. Hours. Maybe less. They started back toward the border town, their truck rattling through the darkness. In the distance, flashes of red light flickered in the sky, ships breaking through the clouds. Alia's voice was calm but urgent. When they arrive, they'll target anything that carries life signals. Houses, vehicles, even people. They erase evidence of contact. Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. They want to hide that you came here. She nodded. And they'll destroy this planet if that's what it takes. When they reached the outskirts of the district, the townspeople were already gathering in fear. Maria ran up, her apron torn, her face pale. Ethan, the sky, it's glowing red. Ethan turned toward the horizon. The clouds were burning. Massive shadows moved behind them. Ships too large to be anything human. Alia stepped forward. Everyone listen. You must go underground, basements, tunnels, anything. Do not look at the lights. The people stared at her, confused and scared. Who are you? One man shouted. Ethan stepped beside her. She's the reason we're still alive, he said firmly. Do what she says. The crowd hesitated only a moment longer before running to hide. Maria grabbed her son's hand and disappeared into a cellar. Alia turned to Ethan. You should go with them. He shook his head. Not a chance. She looked at him, something like sorrow in her eyes. Humans are stubborn, he gave a faint smile. That's what keeps us alive. Then the first attack came. A blinding red beam sliced through the sky, hitting the edge of the town. The ground exploded in flame. Houses crumbled, cars flipped like toys. Ethan and Alia dove behind a stone wall as the shockwave rolled over them. Alia stood quickly, hands glowing blue. She threw a barrier around them, just as another blast hit nearby. The air crackled, heat pressing against the invisible shield. Ethan coughed, covering his mouth. How long can you hold that? As long as I must, she said through gritted teeth. Overhead, the lead ship descended lower, its engines roaring like a storm. From its hull, smaller crafts dropped, swarming through the smoke. Alien soldiers in black armor stepped out, their weapons glowing red hot. Ethan aimed and fired. The first shot hit a soldier square in the chest. Sparks flew, the creature staggered. He fired again, shouting, You want Earth? Come and take it. The aliens returned fire, red bolts burning holes through walls. Alia spread her hands wide, sending waves of blue energy outward. The blast met midair, twisting into a storm of light. The ground shook with every hit. Ethan ran to cover, reloading fast. "Tell me you have a plan!" He yelled. "I do," Alia said. "But you won't like it." She pointed toward the sky. "The main ship controls the others through a command core. If I destroy it, the rest will fall." Ethan nodded. "Then let's do it." She shook her head. "It's shielded. I'll have to get close, and I might not come back." He looked at her in silence for a moment, rain and ash mixing on his face. "I'm not letting you do it alone." Alia hesitated, then reached out and touched his chest lightly. "You have more courage than most of my kind ever did." They climbed a damaged building to get higher ground. The red light from the ship bathed everything below in fire. Alia lifted her hands, gathering energy until her whole body glowed like a blue flame. Ethan stared in awe. "You look like lightning," he said. She smiled faintly. "Then let's strike." With a sharp motion, she hurled a bolt of blue energy upward. It tore through the sky, hitting the ship's shield with a deafening roar. The red glow flickered. Ethan fired at the exposed panels, aiming at weak points. The combined force cracked the armor, but the ship retaliated, firing a massive beam directly at them. Ethan shoved Alia out of the way, taking the full blast on his shoulder. He fell hard, his weapon clattering across the roof. Pain shot through his body. Alia crawled to him, eyes wide. "Ethan!" He groaned. Still breathing. She looked up, fury burning in her gaze. Her voice rose, echoing with power. "You will not take him." She lifted both hands, and the blue energy burst out like a star-going supernova. The ship's cannon overloaded, imploding in a spiral of light. The explosion ripped across the sky. Pieces of metal fell like burning meteors. The remaining drones froze midair, their red lights dimming to black. Silence returned. Ethan lay on the roof, smoke rising around him. Alia knelt beside him, her light fading. "You saved me," she whispered. He smiled weakly. "Guess we're even now." Above them, the wreck of the alien ship burned in the night sky, falling beyond the horizon. But Alia's expression stayed grim. "This was only the vanguard," she said quietly. "The war hasn't begun yet." Ethan reached for her hand. "Then we'll fight it together." She looked at him, her silver eyes softening. "Together," she whispered, and somewhere far above Earth, a dark fleet shifted its course, heading straight for the little blue planet that had just dared to fight back. The night sky was broken, lit by drifting fire from the fallen ships. The border town lay in ruins, half buried under smoke and dust. But amid the silence, life still moved. A flicker of blue light pulsed faintly inside a collapsed building, where two figures lay in the rubble. Ethan opened his eyes slowly. Pain ran through his shoulder, but he was alive. The world smelled of smoke and iron. When he turned, he saw Alia beside him, her body glowing softly, her breathing weak. "Alia," he whispered, trying to lift himself. She opened her eyes. The glow in them was fading like a dying star. "You shouldn't have stayed," she said faintly. "You could have escaped." He smiled, exhausted. "And leave you to save the world alone?" "Not my style." Alia gave a small laugh, short, soft, almost human. "You are strange, Ethan Cross." He looked at the sky. The largest alien ship still burned above the clouds, breaking apart into fragments. "Did we win?" "For now," she said. "But my people, they will see this as defiance. They will come again, much stronger." Ethan turned toward her. "Then we'll be ready next time." She studied his face for a long moment. "You humans," she murmured, "you fight for hope even when you have no reason. On my world, that spirit was lost long ago." He reached for her hand, warm, trembling, but still glowing faintly. "Then maybe you came here to remember it." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy with things unsaid. Outside, the sound of footsteps approached. Survivors, Maria, a few townsfolk, and a small boy carrying a lantern, stepped into the ruined street. "Ethan," Maria called, tears in her eyes. "You're alive." He stood slowly, helping Alia to her feet. The people froze when they saw her silver skin shimmer beneath the dust. Fear flickered in their eyes. Alia lowered her gaze. "They see what I am." Ethan stepped forward, his voice firm. "She saved all of you. She didn't come to harm us, she came to protect us." Maria hesitated, then walked up and placed her hand gently on Alia's arm. "Then she's one of us," she said softly. One by one, the others nodded. The boy handed Alia the lantern, his eyes wide with curiosity. "You're shiny," he said innocently. Alia smiled for the first time since the battle. And you're brave, she replied. The wind shifted. Over the hills, the first light of dawn began to rise. Smoke turned golden in the morning glow. Ethan looked at Alia. You can't stay here, can you? Her smile faded. No, my signal is out there now. If they find me again, this place will burn. He swallowed hard. Where will you go? She glanced toward the mountains. There's a hidden valley beyond the old ridge. The magnetic field there can hide me for a while, long enough to build a new ship. Ethan nodded slowly. You'll leave Earth. Alia's eyes softened. Maybe not forever. Your planet has something I've never seen before. Courage that doesn't come from weapons or power. It comes from heart. She stepped closer. The blue light in her chest flickered softly. You showed me that, Ethan Cross. He smiled, tired but proud. Guess humans are good teachers. Alia tilted her head, her expression thoughtful. If my people ever come again, tell them what you told me. What's that? That being human isn't weakness, she said. It's strength. Before he could reply, a faint humming sound filled the air. Alia looked up. A small orb floated down from the clouds, her emergency escape pod responding to her life signature. She turned back to him, her voice breaking. Time's short. Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. Go before they track it. She hesitated. You could come with me. He shook his head slowly. This is my home. My fight's here. Alia stepped close, so close he could see the faint silver lines on her skin glowing like stars. She raised her hand and touched his injured shoulder. A soft blue light flowed into him, warm, healing, alive. He gasped as strength returned to his arm. What did you— A gift, she said gently. Part of me. So you'll remember that the universe isn't empty. The pod's door opened with a soft hiss. She looked at him one last time, her eyes shining like molten silver. Goodbye, Ethan. He nodded, though his throat tightened. Safe travels, Alia. She stepped into the pod, and with a rush of wind it lifted into the morning sky, leaving behind a trail of blue light that faded into the clouds. Ethan stood there long after it vanished. The town was waking up behind him, people rebuilding, cleaning, talking softly. Life was returning. Weeks later, the desert bloomed again after a rare rainfall. In Ethan's small garden among the dust and stones, something new had grown. A single flower made of metal petals, glowing faintly blue. He picked it up gently, smiling. A whisper brushed through his mind, soft and familiar. You showed me what it means to be human. Ethan looked up at the sky, where the stars still burned above the clouds. No, he murmured, you reminded us what it means. And somewhere beyond the galaxy, in a far-off corner of space, a silver ship drifted quietly, its pilot watching a small blue world from afar, whispering a word she had learned from humans: hope.